Hello, Out Entrepreneurs. Rhodes Perry here, and welcome to episode number 10 of The Out Entrepreneur, a weekly podcast where I get to interview today's most inspiring LGBTQ bosses crushing it in business. Today, I am thrilled to be interviewing Joel Brown, a fellow LGBT certified business owner who I met last year at the NGLCC conference. Joel, are you ready to inspire fellow out bosses?
I am ready to do my very best, yes.
Awesome. No doubt you will. Joel is the Chief Visionary Officer of Numos, a consulting firm that specializes in organizational sustainability, leadership development, conflict resolution, executive coaching, and cultural intelligence. Joel partners with organizations to improve business performance and workplace culture. More specifically, Joel is skilled in unconscious bias and cross-cultural dialogue and was named an expert panelist for the Global Diversity and Inclusion Benchmarks, a global strategic and cross-disciplinary tool used to help organizations become more culturally intelligent. Joel, it is really an honor to have you on the show today. I wanted to first start out and have you tell us just a little bit more about what your business is all about and what makes it unique.
Thank you for having me, and it's always a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with other LGBTQ businesses locally, regionally, domestically, and hopefully abroad. What our business does, Numos, and we've been in business now for nearly 12 years, our focus is on helping to create more inclusive organizations. And to do so, we focus on the concept of cultural intelligence. How do you not only navigate multicultural environments, but how do you also, as a leader, leverage the skill sets, the perspectives, and the cultural capital that each person brings in celebration of who they are. So, for example, if you are Chinese American, for example, there's something that you bring to the table that is unique and powerful. If you're an LGBTQ American, there's something that you bring to the table as well that companies and organizations need, that the world needs in order to move forward. And so I believe that of all the issues that we have to deal with in the world, if we bring everyone to the table, if we learn how to harness the skill sets and the talents that each person has, that we can solve anything. And I think the reason why we haven't solved a lot of the issues, whether it's around global warming and climate change, to transportation issues, to issues related to poverty and education, is because we simply have not taken advantage of the collective wisdom that we all possess. What makes us unique is that we see ourselves as change agents. I don't see myself simply as an entrepreneur, and I don't see my business as something that's simply there just to help businesses grow and expand. It's all about changing the world and changing consciousness. And if you're not in business to change the world, then why are you doing it? No matter who you are, whether you're Steve Jobs or someone else, you're there because you want to improve the human condition in some way. Some ways are more significant, I would say, than others, but ultimately they have the same objective. And so what's allowed us to be successful is we are agile. We're able to do a number of different things and not just focus on one particular aspect of consulting and management and leadership, but we have a broad-based perspective, and we've been very successful in reaching a number of organizations for the last 12 years.
Congratulations on being in business for 12 years. That's huge. And we were just talking before the interview about the NGLCC report that came out. And one of the things that they were most proud of is the number of years. 12 years was actually something that they featured in the report, and they flagged businesses just like yours. There was around 130 or 40 businesses who are in business for 12 or more years. So congratulations on that. What has you most fired up right now in your business? What's the one thing that, is really inspiring you to wake up every day and keep doing what you do?
Given the political climate, I was just having a conversation with someone this morning, a friend of mine and a colleague, and she was feeling a little depressed, demoralized. And she said, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, remember, that's why we do this work. And if there has ever been a time for greater cultural intelligence and greater leadership, I think it's right now, especially as we experience leaders and people as not having those things. And so despite all that's been said, I'm actually inspired because I think that this is the dawning of a new consciousness. I think people and movements arise in societies because we've allowed them to. And I think this is an opportunity for us collectively, whether you work in the professional sphere, whether you work with nonprofits, whether you are grassroots and work with people doing organizing, to really change the mindset and to really help people think about things differently. One of the things that I'm really passionate about right now is helping people learn how to dialogue. I think we've lost that art in this country. Communication has become a sport. It's become politicized and it's become bloody. And I don't see people really understanding how to listen and how to deconstruct language and how to understand that people have different meanings attached to different words. So, for example, I could say that you're not being fair. Well, we had to figure out what does fairness mean to you and what does fairness mean to me and find the middle ground. And I think that's where I think a lot of opportunity exists for us, is to really help cross-cultural dialogue and to expand it not only beyond here within the United States, but to go abroad, because a number of these issues are global. This is not just the United States. These are things that are connected to movements around the world. I read somewhere, and I haven't verified this, so don't quote me on it, but I read that in the last 5 to 10 years, 72 countries or 72 governments have become more conservative. So when you think about what we're facing here in the United States, it's easy for us to be very myopic and think, oh, woe is me, the U.S. we're not educated, we're not conscious. But in reality, this is a global trend, and I think we need to be more globally minded as we deal with it. So that's what I'm really excited about, is helping people to have really smart, engaging, gracious conversations with each other so that we can start to solve these things that are plaguing societies all across the world.
Finding the silver lining in the current environment where things seem very partisan and difficult to actually have a meaningful conversation where we can get to some form of agreement. So the work that you're doing, both here in the United States and beyond, is incredibly needed, and it's true that you are a change agent. I want to shift just a bit and focus more on your own journey in starting your business. And I just wanted to start from a place of an observation that I see with some out entrepreneurs, where it seems like for some of us, we arrive at starting our businesses for one of two reasons. We either feel a calling to pursue a purpose-driven idea, or we can no longer conform to a workplace culture that doesn't value who we are. And I'm curious, which one of these reasons may resonate the most with you?
Ultimately, it was about the vision. The beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is that you are, in essence, a visionary. You see things and you see something that doesn't yet exist, whether it's a process, a service, or a commodity. And so as an entrepreneur, your journey is to bring something into existence that has never been done before. And I think that's a very powerful way to do it. And so for me, I wanted to change how business was done, and I wanted to help businesses understand what to me is one of the most critical pieces for business, which is cultural intelligence. Now, that being said, I also along the way came to the conclusion that working for others is not the best way for me to assist companies and to do the work that I do. Now, obviously, if you are an entrepreneur, you always ultimately do have to work for others. They're called clients. And you have to work with others, and these are called colleagues and associates. But there's a lot of freedom that I have now that I didn't have before. And I think I'm much more effective outside of business and organizations than I would be within, simply because from my experience when I worked within a business, I was always told that I had to toe the company line. I had to be aware of political considerations. And not that you don't have to be savvy now as an entrepreneur, but I find that I have much more freedom, and I find that I work much better when I'm able to focus more openly on my skill sets and to introduce things that sometimes are restricted because of bureaucracy or because some bureaucrat or someone has said that you can't do X, Y, and Z. So I think it's a little bit of both, but it definitely leans more towards bringing a vision into manifestation. And that's the same reason why I continue to stay in business, because I see something bigger. I see a world and I see a way of doing business that I think is important. And I want to make sure that when people go to work that they feel validated. You figure most of us, particularly if you live in the U.S., we work too many hours. And that's a lot of time to be in an environment that's not inclusive and that's not validating. So I want to revolutionize how workplaces and companies function so that people can feel dignity and people can feel like they're making a contribution and people don't feel like they have to sacrifice who they are, which is something I hear across the board. Even if you're not LGBTQ or a person of color or a woman or whomever, I hear this from a lot of people. People just feel like they have to check themselves at the door. And the question I've always asked is, well, why? Now, obviously, you can't show up at work like you would for a party. No one would suggest that. But when you are restrained, how can you be your best self, your best ideas, your best innovations? And so that's what I really want to change. And so that's the vision I've held on to for my business.
And that vision is broad, and it's for many of the clients that you're working with. When you look inside your business, what's the one thing that you're doing to create an inclusive environment where either your clients or the people that you're working with, your employees or people that you subcontract with, feel included, and you're effectively modeling for other folks who are just really trying to wrap their minds around how exactly to create inclusive workplaces and practices?
The first thing I focus on is setting expectations up front. So when I work with people, I always say to them, I'm not the boss. I tell them that I don't call myself an expert. What I do say to them is that I'm not the only person who has expertise. And so I really encourage people to be open and frank about their ideas and their thoughts. I think that's the most important thing, is to level set at the beginning. I think language is important to make sure that people understand that, it's not about hierarchy, and it's not about one person knows everything or one person being omnipotent. I think is really important for people to understand that when you look at a problem, you need to have different perspectives. And I've always been really good about that. And I think not only is that my personal belief, but I've also had experiences where that's not been the case. And I've seen how they've gone off the rail because people have been left out of the process. So I always try to do that. I also make sure that I say to people all the time that when we talk about diversity, we have to understand that includes everybody. And sometimes in the diversity field, we'll hear people say, well, we have diverse people here in our group. We don't have a lot of white men. And I said, well, white men that's part of diversity. People by themselves are not diverse. Groups are diverse, but everybody is diverse. And if you don't have someone or a certain perspective represented, then you should figure out, number one, why, and then number two, what you can do to include that person, even if it is a male or someone who's white or someone who is maybe cisgender. It can be any number of things, but there's always something to bring to the table. So that's how I try to foster it. I hope most days I do a good job at it. At least I strive for it. And I think that's what's made it easy for me to work with different people.
And going back to yourself, did being LGBTQ influence your journey to become your own boss?
Absolutely. Affectionately, I call LGBTQ people Jedi. And the reason I use the term Jedi is because I think, like any cultural group, and this is part of the research I'm actually doing right now, we have a unique perspective. And I realized that as a gay man, there were things that I could see that were just different and unique. And there wasn't always the respect or the opportunity to express that. So that certainly led me to pursue the journey that I'm on. I also think that as a gay man, and this is not limited just to gay men within the community, but I'm just speaking from my personal experience, there are things that we bring to the table that are wonderful. Our sense of creativity, our sense of resilience and grit. I mean, anybody who's LGBTQ knows that in this society, for you to make the declarative statement of this is who I am, that shows a lot of power. That shows a lot of moxie. These are things that are important for business. And so a lot of businesses, at least when I was coming of age, were not as sophisticated and as aware to allow that to happen. But I think as a gay man, I certainly thought to myself, these are things that are wonderful. They're beautiful. These are enhancements. These are things that are important. And I want to let them out, and I don't want to be restrained. And I also think it's important to be open about who you are. It would be odd for me to do cultural intelligence work or D&I work, short for diversity and inclusion, if I was not also fully actualized in terms of being a gay man. So me being a gay man has been part of the inspiration. It's not been the primary piece of it, but it certainly is something there. And I relish the fact of being able to go into organizations and change how they perceive LGBT people and also LGBT businesses. We are a force to be reckoned with. And I think by doing the work that I do, somewhere along the line, it's helped change people's perceptions around our community and what we can do for the world.
I love it. So take us back and share a time where it was most difficult for you to be an out boss. This could have been a moment where you were challenged with bringing your authentic self to your work because you were afraid of losing business or you felt unsafe. And as you share this moment with us, if you could be as specific as possible to let us know what was going on for you and how your business was impacted, that can absolutely help other folks thinking about just taking that first step to becoming an entrepreneur.
Sure. I do a lot of executive coaching, and I love executive coaching because it is a personal relationship. And I actually had someone say to me, or give the feedback, not to me, of course, but to the client, that they found it difficult to relate to me because not only did I have values that were different than theirs, but that my values were, in their words, directly opposite. And so it made it difficult for them to feel comfortable with me in a coaching capacity. Now, I have not spoken with that person to find out exactly what they mean by that. However, I can tell you that in my professional engagements, I come across a number of people who might have very strong views against LGBTQ people, or may be very open about I don't want to say their religious convictions because, it's not all religions and spiritual communities are anti-LGBTQ, but at least their interpretation of them is such that they were hostile to us. And I could do one of two things. I'm always open with people to say, look, if you don't think that I'm the best person for you, that's okay. In business, I think we have to look at the relationship as two ways. A lot of times business people and entrepreneurs only focus on, well, does this person like me? And you also have to think about, well, do I like them? And what I mean by that is, am I a good fit? Is there a values match? And will this person actually allow me to help them? Even if we have different political views, social views, and cultural perspectives. And in that particular instance, what the client concluded was that the person was not open-minded and that ultimately, if they wanted to stay working with that particular company, they would either have to adjust and grow and mature, or they wouldn't be a good fit for leadership. And I totally agree with their assessment, because if you have a hard time dealing with me because I am different, whatever that means, how are you going to deal with different people in the workplace, different colleagues, different associates, and yes, other clients?
And when you're working with those clients where you realize you might be in the middle of a project or you might be in the middle of a coaching engagement, you can learn really quickly, in the future, these are the type of people that I don't want to attract. So it can help you find your no when you start to see trends of maybe future clients who might be uncomfortable with who you are. It's not always doom and gloom in bringing our whole selves to work. So I was hoping that you could also share one particular moment where you were able to successfully leverage your LGBT identity to benefit your business.
Well, there are several things. I think number one, we sometimes may make the assumption that people we're dealing with are not LGBTQ. So there have been a number of situations where I've been in companies or I've given speaking engagements or I've done some work in an organization where someone has come up to me privately and said, thank you. You, just by being here, by being a presence, you've helped to inspire me. You've helped to make this journey for me easier. You've given me some things to think about, and you've ultimately inspired me to be more open and to be more of a leader. So that's happened. I've also had engagements where the person I was working with was LGBTQ, and unbeknownst to either of us, after spending some time with them and just getting to know them a little bit better, you're like, oh, you're a fellow rainbow warrior as well. Wonderful. And so I think what we have to realize is that on the parallel track, there are a number of LGBT stakeholders and companies that are looking for quality businesses as well. It's not what I lead with, but it certainly is wonderful to see other people sitting across from you who also come from a similar community. And I was working with the military once, for example, and I would always get asked, where are you from? That's a very important thing. And I knew what they were trying to get at. So once you say San Francisco, you can see people's, the wheels turning for people and people making their own conclusions. And I remember we were talking about recruitment to a group of leaders, and one of them said to me, quite frankly, I'll never forget this. I was in a session and they said, can we have a frank conversation about don't ask, don't tell, don't harass, don't pursue? Because it's hurting our mission and our preparedness, and we are losing the best and the brightest if we don't talk about this openly. And the person said to me, additionally, and if our senior leaders told you not to talk about this, then they are doing us a grave disservice. So we want you to be frank, and we want to have an open conversation, and we want you to help us think about how we can move this installation forward. I was ecstatic. I was floored because I did not believe at that time that people could be that balanced and that reasoned with their perspective, because this was many years ago. But I was really happy that you see things were changing. And by virtue of us being there and having that frank conversation and also talking about how do you change the conversation such that LGBTQ people are welcomed and seen as viable assets and resources for the U.S. military, I could tell the change was on the horizon. And obviously later you start to see the repeal of don't ask, don't tell. And now there are a number of service people and people in the chain of command who are LGBTQ, who are open and serving honorably and charitably. So those are three different situations where it's definitely been a positive, and I would say that there are tons more opportunities or situations out there that I just can't think of at the moment where, yes, me being there as an LGBTQ person, especially just by my own personal presence and my business acumen, I've also helped change the conversation and the perception of what it means to be LGBTQ.
Holding that space and being comfortable in your own skin and being out really does have a positive impact for many people, whether they're LGBT, whether they're allies, or they're just trying to understand a little bit more about LGBT communities. It's really important in that space that you're holding. Before we go to a sponsorship break, I wanted to ask you to reflect on the ups and the downs of being an outboss. And if there's one thing that you could share with our listeners to inspire them to bring their whole selves to work, what would that be?
The positive aspect of being an out boss is you never have to worry about coming out to your boss. You never have to worry about any type of negative repercussions. There's full acceptance, there's a full embrace, there's that freedom that I spoke about earlier. I would say the only downside, really, besides the potential for someone to be prejudicial or to judge you prematurely without knowing your business or your work, is that we need more of us out. Being an LGBT entrepreneur is, I don't want to call us a unicorn, but there's still not as many as I would like. And I know there are quite a few, but I want to see legions more. And it's always helpful to have mentors and peer-to-peer mentoring just to discuss all sorts of different aspects of your business, whether it comes down to pricing, marketing, business strategy, client engagement, deliverables, co-partnership, et cetera, et cetera. And for people to understand what that journey is like from an LGBTQ perspective, I think that's where, sometimes it's been challenging in the past, is just, identifying who else can I talk to who understands my journey? Who else can I talk to who understands some of these intricacies and, is willing to also share knowledge. A lot of knowledge gets passed down in informal settings. And we know that's also how systems maintain themselves. It's not always because there's some law or rule out there that disenfranchises people. It's because certain members of our society just don't have access to social capital. And when you're LGBTQ, sometimes getting access into certain places is difficult. And then if you are within the LGBTQ community, if you are transgender, if you are a woman, if you're bi, or if you're a person of color, it can also be difficult because people are not inviting you to the table, more or less. And so I think having the relationships and having those what I call sacred relationships with people who you can talk to honestly, you can get honest feedback, you can share your concerns, your joys, where people don't feel threatened, people don't feel jealous, people are not trying to compete with you, and they just realize that there's tons of work for everybody, and we just need to support each other. And that's where I would like to see our community grow, is in our mutual support. Not that we don't offer some of that now, but I always think there could be more collegiality, camaraderie, and the sense of Ubuntu within the LGBTQ community, because we still are a minoritized population. Right. Which means that we need to support each other. And so I think that's where it's tough sometimes, is finding like-minded people, kindred spirits who can share in that journey, and also finding people who you can trust to share that information, share that business expertise with.
A rising tide lifts all ships. On that note, we're going to take a very short sponsorship break. But for our listeners, please don't go anywhere, because when we return, we're going to jump into our bonus round.
HR and diversity professionals. Are you struggling with engaging LGBTQ talent? Do you stay awake at night worrying about limiting litigation risks? Have you considered seeking support around these concerns, but just aren't sure where to turn? Look no further. Rhodes Perry Consulting offers you solutions with the Engaging LGBTQ Talent A to Z certification. This proven 4-week mentorship program delivers skills, offers support, and connects you with other professionals committed to transforming themselves and their workplaces. Learn more about this cutting-edge program by visiting rhodesperry.com and use the promo code RPC for a 10% discount. Take action and visit rhodesperry.com.
Welcome back, Outbosses. We are now going into our bonus round, where we're going to have a chance to gain some insights on how we can bring our whole selves to work. And then we're going to learn one way that we can stay in touch with Joel after our conversation's over. So, Joel, are you ready for our quick-fire questions?
I was born ready. Let's do it.
I love it. Okay. So in one sentence, what does it mean to bring your whole self to work?
In one sentence, it means not having to think or feel about how you show up from a cultural perspective. You just are.
And what's one personal habit that helps you master yourself and your business?
Meditation.
Yes, amen to that. And name one thing that you readily delegate in your business to stay focused on what you're good at.
I have a confession. I hate email. I hate doing a lot of that logistical stuff. So I have learned the power and the joy of turning over my email to my assistant to handle.
Yes, that is so smart. And can you share a book, a podcast, or some other kind of publication that has contributed to your success as an outboss?
I don't know if it would be particular to just being LGBTQ. I would say the book that I really have enjoyed is The Energy of Money. Because I think if you're going to go into business for yourself, you have to really understand and hopefully improve one's relationship with money and prosperity, i.e., hey, if you're providing a service or providing a good, you deserve to get compensated for that. And that has really helped me to grow and helped me to make sure that I'm not undervaluing my service and my talent.
The Energy of Money. We will definitely include that in the show notes. Please share one piece of advice to inspire the next generation of outbosses to take the entrepreneurial leap.
There's never going to be a perfect time to take the risk, so do it now. Now, be strategic about it, so plan it and talk with coaches and talk with your trusted advisors. But I remember thinking, when I start my business, I'll do it when fill in the blank. And in all honesty, I should have started my business 3 years before I did. So if you're waiting for that perfect time to get out, do it now. We need you. We know you have something brilliant you want to do, share, provide. So let's have it.
Take action and be smart about the action that you take. Yeah.
Correct.
So Joel, thank you so much for being on the show and inspiring fellow outbosses. Before we go, can you share one way that we can stay in touch with you and just to learn more about what you do?
Absolutely. You can email me at joel@numos. That's P as in Papa, N as in Nancy, E as in Echo, U, M as in Mary, O, S as in Sam.com. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. So those are the best ways to get a hold of me. And if you reach out, I try to return all emails despite my aversion to them within 24 hours.
Wow, that's fast. That's a good guarantee. So for listeners, definitely take advantage of that. Joel is brilliant. So thanks again for being on the show, Joel.
Thank you, my friend.
And for fellow outbosses, thank you for tuning into this week's episode. It is always my pleasure to connect with you and so many inspiring outbosses like Joel. As a next step, check out the show notes for highlights from today's conversation and consider leaving a rating and review in iTunes. For now, keep being your authentic selves 100% of the time.